Obviously, we are here to talk about London Calling, which is already out on digital in the UK and is coming to DVD in the very near future. I mean, how does that feel, in this day and age, getting
I was
a
about to
second
say,
feature?
I love that people are still making DVDs. That's all right, cool.
Nice. And I mean, you've made a few kind of action-focused films in the past, and in London Calling, although those elements are still present, they're kind of much more in the background. And this is a film that's more honed in on the relationship between Tommy and Julian. What was it about this approach that kind of appealed to you? Is that kind of what like got you back in action that you could do something slightly different to what you'd done before?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for a fresh take. I mean, I think and it always starts with characters. So for me, the crux of the movie was the relationship between these two people who are very mismatched. One is trying to get back to his son, and the other's trying to get the approval of his father, and they kind of find themselves along the way, and they find each other. And so I thought that that was a really unique hook that would allow for I think comedy, often comes from these mismatched pairings. And so when you have that base, I feel like the action works a lot better, especially if every beat of the action is telling a story. You know what I mean? And so throughout this film, while it is an action comedy, the action definitely does take a back seat for the characters and for the story. And that was something that, I thought was more important.
I mean, you previously worked with Josh on Bandit. What is it about him that makes him such a strong lead performer?
We had an amazing time making Bandit, and I think, one of the things I always tell people is that, he makes me a better director. He likes to joke that I can make him a better actor. But our styles really complement each other. He's very loose and he's very adaptable. You can find the magic in the moments, and I'm very rigid and I'm very structured and I plan everything out. And so when we come together, it kind of just works. And we built this trust and we built this camaraderie, having gone through the hell that was making Bandit, that by the time I flipped him this script, we'd already been trading some stuff back and forth. There were two other movies we were looking at. And I think life's too short sometimes. It's kind of it's often about who you work with, sometimes more than the what. And if you're going to be in the trenches with someone, I mean, it's really 2 years of your life. I mean, even though you're working with them on set for only about a month and there's, another month of prep, let's call it 2, 3 months, there's still this process that goes on for the course of like a year and a half, 2 years. And you want to be with people that you like and you get along with, who share the same passions, who share the same sort of instinct when it comes to telling stories and making movies.
Mm. So obviously you knew that you could work with Josh, but this film, as I said, is based around, Tommy and Julian, and the chemistry between the two is vital. At what point did you realize that, Jeremy was the right person, that he was kind of that missing piece of that puzzle?
Yeah, the movie was going to live or die on that chemistry,
Mm.
and thank God, thank God, I can cast decently. They say 90% of a director's job is casting, and it's true. I mean, we cast a wide net for that role. We had come across a few other young actors that we really, really liked, but when Josh and I met Jeremy individually first, and then we kind of all came together, and we were both curious what the other thought. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, I met him. What'd you think? What'd you think? And we just knew right away that he was our guy. And the funny thing about Jeremy is, he's like he's like a power lifter, and he builds cars, and he has a SWAT training school in the Midwest, and all these things that Julian is not. And
Mm.
so I had to keep reminding him, I need you soft and cuddly. I need you soft and cuddly. Stop being such a badass. But yeah, no, I mean, as soon as the two of them got together on set and they were riffing off each other, there was this energy that you could feel that they were really bonding. And I think, there was this encouragement from one another to play and have fun and let loose. And I mean, I think it's there on screen for sure.
Mm. And it kind of covers off sort of my next question. Obviously Jeremy is probably better known to most audience members for his work in horror, in the It films
Yeah.
and Goosebumps, where he's very much the heart, but also kind of the butt of the joke. And here he's thrown into the comedy, but also action sequences. I was going to say, how did he fare? But it sounds like he already came to you guys ready to go.
Yeah, he was constantly asking me if there were opportunities for him to kick more ass. And I was like, listen, again, Nietzsche soft and cuddly. But no, the funny thing about the It movies is that he is the heart of those stories. And that's also why I thought he was great here because, you look at all these characters in the movie, they're all whack jobs, but they all think that they're the hero of their story. They all think that they're pursuing a noble cause. But really the only pure character in this movie is Julian. And you need to sort of feel this empathy for his innocence and his youth. And it's really this coming of age tale, really, at the end of the day. If you kind of peel it all away, the movie's about fathers and sons and it's about coming of age. And I knew that he would be that anchor piece, especially because of the work I had seen him do in It. But once the comedy came into play, his timing, his instincts were just really on point.
I think that's something that the film does so well. You said that, all the characters kind of believe themselves to be, the kind of the hero of the story. But I think that's what's important to make a good sort of action story is, that even the bad guys don't see themselves as bad guys because, there's nothing worse than, the mustache twirling,
Yeah.
caricature and baddie. So, it must have been quite nice to get all these actors on board and kind of just let them all, I mean, it must have been a nightmare wrangling the egos. Like, no, you're not actually the hero in this story, but just let them all play that.
Yeah, and that was something that stood out to me about the script when I first read it. Because I'm one of those people who always believes that the best villains are the villains who truly don't act like villains. And I think that's actually something that Black Panther did incredibly well. I know a lot of people watched that film and were mesmerized by Chadwick, who's incredible, by the way. But I walked away from that movie being like, okay, Michael B. Jordan as the villain, like that to me was what worked so well. And so when I read this and I was looking at all these different characters, I'm like, okay, so Aidan Gillen, Freddie Darby thinks that he's on a noble pursuit of honor and vengeance. Fine. Alistair is really just trying to get right with God and leave this life behind. His brother is just trying to protect him. Benson thinks he's raising his son to be a man. Like all these people think that they're pursuing this sort of noble, righteous cause, and yet they're just so far out of their depth when it comes to morality that I thought it was really amusing.
And the film was, you shot it in Cape Town, but it's doubling for, California and for London. How did you kind of go around, making that work and kind of marrying this, one central place for these two other very different places?
Yeah, it feels like it's something I've gotten pretty good at. Bandit, we were trying to double 1980s Canada in the south of Georgia, which I don't recommend anybody do. But when I got to Cape Town, I was hesitant at first because, you never want the audience to be taken out. But I started sort of getting a lay of the land, and I thought, oh my God, it's incredible. Their central business district has street corners that kind of resemble the architecture you would see in London. And the outskirts of the city could be the California desert. Like you would never know. It could be Palm Springs. And even a lot of the suburban and residential neighborhoods, the only dead giveaway in South Africa is that they have these sort of like gates and security barbed wire around a lot of the complexes because obviously it's a very different world over there. So that was a bit of a challenge. And obviously, cars being driven on the opposite side of the road in terms of California. But it was one of the easier things I've had to double for sure in terms of my career because again, Cape Town has a lot of those roots, people who came down from Europe and the UK and they settled there. And, so a lot of that architectural influences were already there. And then the desert is the desert. And because the script mostly took place outside of Los Angeles, I was like, okay, this isn't going to be too hard. Just as long as it doesn't rain, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Cape Town does seem to kind of be the, where people are going for, their more independent action, as I'm thinking, I mean, Novocaine was shot over there, Boy Kills World was shot over there. It definitely seems to be the place that, you action guys are kind of gravitating towards.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. One of my best friends was making Boy Kills World, and I was staying at his house in California, and he kept raving about Cape Town. So you got to come to Cape Town. You got to come to Cape Town. I said, yeah, maybe one day, maybe one day. Literally a year later, I was in Cape Town. But I understand. I understand it. I mean, it's not just action films. I think it's anyone who's trying to get a good bang for their buck. The dollar goes a lot further, and the crews are phenomenal. It was the best experience I've ever had making anything in my career. It's truly an incredible place. Just yeah, nothing but raves from me.
I'm kind of sticking with the look of the film. You and your DP Alex have worked together for a number of years. How important is that relationship to you? Because I know that some directors kind of, swap and change throughout the career, but what is it about, Alex that you enjoy working with so much?
Yeah, I really I'm sort of very much built on loyalty in that if I have a good working relationship with someone and we speak the same language technically and just in general, we get along and the results are there, I will always push to work with that person again. I'm very loyal in that sense. But Alex and I just have a really great shorthand. We like the same things. We're both film nerds. We both love video games. I mean, we just I can walk into a set and look at something and wince and he'll know exactly right away what I don't like and what I do like. You know what I mean? Like we've gotten to a point where it just there's this really effortless groove that we settle into. And the crews have always picked up on it. I mean, when we did Bandit, a lot of the camera team kind of picked up on it right away. They saw how we worked and on London Calling when we were in Cape Town, the crews kind of saw the way that we jived and the speed at which we moved because we do a lot of setups and we would tell the crews in advance, this is kind of how we move, this is the pace, and this is what you can expect. And they'll usually be like, okay, that's not going to work. And then they're like, oh my God, okay, I see what you guys are talking about. It's a great working relationship. And if I could only just work with one DP for the rest of my life, it would 100% be him.
And so outside the work that you've done together, Alex seems to have, lensed quite a lot of horror films, the VHS films, more recently Descendant. Is there any
Yeah,
chance we might get sort of a horror movie from you? Because I kind of feel like outside of maybe video games, the action horror subgenre is horribly underutilized.
it is. Yeah, I've been considering dabbling. There's some stuff that's come across my desk that I have found to be really interesting as an opportunity for me to flex a different muscle. I think that, I really look, I think the world is a bleak place right now, unfortunately. And I think people will always need escapism, but people need levity. And I think that as underutilized as that genre is, the action comedy genre is severely underutilized because A, it's hard to pull off the balance. A lot of people I don't think can pull it off. Not only that, but usually one suffers at the at the expense of the other. The action's good, the comedy. So this was a really good challenge and test for me to kind of flex that muscle. But you know, I do think that we need more filmmakers who can do that. So I think that's what my focus has been. But I have been thinking about it recently, and I do think I'm considering flexing a different muscle just to sort of. I feel like I've already proven sort of what I like and what I can do in this genre because I look at Uncharted, which is where Alex and I started our working relationship. I look at Uncharted, I look at Bandit, I look at London Calling, and those three projects feel like part of a chapter in my career, right? They kind of have the same feel and style, but also, they're anchored with heart and comedy. So I feel like I've done that, and I'd be happy to keep doing it, but I'm always up for a challenge, so we'll see.
And I guess, my final question, why do you hope that audiences take a chance on London Calling?
Because I think that it offers something a little bit more resonant than your average action movie. I think that it has a lot of heart. It has something to say. It touches on themes that are incredibly relevant. But ultimately, it's just a fun time. I mean, it's just in a time where a lot of movies sort of feel like they're getting monotonous and repetitive. I feel like this is just about embracing fun and going back to a time where movies were just about capturing you for a couple hours and saying, turn off your brain and just enjoy the ride.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck with the release of this. And now, I look forward to seeing what you get up to next.
Thank you. Looking forward to speaking to you next time.